Are you waiting on a lightning strike? Are you waiting for the perfect night?
Hi, thank you for tuning in to Unstoppable Angels, where we share our stories about taking our pain and turning it into power. Today's guest is myself. I figure it's better to get to know the host. My name is Michelle Van Etten, and I'm so honored to be here to have this conversation with you today. And I know that as we have this conversation and you hear my story, I hope that it will hit you hard enough to know that anybody can do anything they want once they put their heart and mind to it. And maybe it will be a lifeline for you, because I know that everybody's story is a lifeline for someone. So if this is something that you think that somebody else would want to hear, then please, by all means, share. So one of the turning points in my life, a story I'll never forget, and it kind of set the tone for everything I ever was going to go through and allow myself to change by. So I'm out with my brother and a friend, and we were going to a party. And on the way to go to this party, there was a train, and it was stopped on the tracks. So the train stopped on the tracks, and we waited, and we had to go around this train to get by. So we went around the train. A good 7 hours later, after going to a party, doing a lot of drugs, we were driving down that same road. And automatically, the driver decided to go around the track. That train was moving. I saw my life flash before my eyes, and I knew I was on the train to hell. And if I didn't get off, there was no hope for me. And that was one of the biggest turning points in my life. Now we're going to go back a little further, and we're going to talk about how did this train get off the track in the first place? So they say that most of your personality is created before you're like 7 or 8 years old, which was very interesting to me. And I learned this in leadership. And I was like, really? Is that true? I had a great upbringing. My mom and dad loved me to pieces. I think if there was one thing I could say, my mom loved me too much. For 7 years, she wanted a daughter. And so by the time I was born, all she wanted to do was dress me in these little Polly Flinders dresses and the little patent leather shoes. By the way, I was a tomboy, so this wasn't working out very well for me. And I remember very vividly, I think it was in first grade, and I was still being dressed like a doll. My mom had put one of these dresses on me and had all the little frills on it and everything. And my teacher would not let me go out on the playground. She said I was in my Sunday best. And she was like, I'm sorry, you can't go out on the playground. All the kids in the class were making fun of me. And that was it was a really weird thing, because once I figured out what was bothering me for so long, it didn't make any sense. But I came to the conclusion that I was looked at like a doll, like, dress her up, put her on a shelf, and she's perfect that way, right? Because she was a cute little girl. And so it developed in me this need to be perfect all the time, never have anything out of place, have to have the perfect boyfriend, have to have the perfect life, have to do great in school, and all of these things. Well, there's a great thing about being perfect. It doesn't work. It doesn't exist. So of course, as I was growing up, I became more and more of a tomboy a lot of the time. And I really rebelled against those dresses. I ended up cutting them up. Barbie dolls, I would cut their hair, I would dye it. I hated them all, so it really didn't matter. I was going to do something with them. But by the time I was about 12, I started noticing boys, right? Like most girls do. Right? I think. Maybe I was a little young, but it is what it is. And I liked older boys. And so my first boyfriend was when I was 13, and he was 16 and a half. Highly don't recommend this. It's not going to lead up to a great situation. And in the beginning of our relationship, he was so sweet and nice and kind and everything like that. But over the years, he lived with another family and he learned how to be violent. And all of a sudden, I am literally dating or like going out with, sleeping with the enemy. So I'm about 14 and a half, 15 years old. And I'm starting to learn what it's like to get beat, basically. Everything had to be perfect. If there was a wrinkle in a sock or shoes or anything, the whole day was ruined, and I was walking on eggshells. And he would always tell me that no one would love me. No one would care about you. If you didn't have me, no one would be there. And so at a very young age, I was getting this message that I was worthless. And by the time I was 15, I'd been thrown up against a truck and had stitches, 10 stitches in the back of my head, just for talking to someone. Prom night, he picked me up. I didn't know he couldn't dance, so I was dancing with friends, and I guess that infuriated him. And on our way home, he tried to wreck my mom's convertible. And then we went to an after party. Well, I went to an after party. I actually left him on the side of the road. And I went to this after party, and at this after party, it was at the YMCA, so there wasn't drinking or any of that kind of stuff. I brought my mom's station wagon, and I went there by myself. He came, and I was begging people, don't let him take me. He came and he grabbed me by like lifting me up. And people were like, oh, that's so sweet. He's picking you up. He lifted me up and carried me out. And when he got me in the car, he basically told me he was going to take me to my grave. And I looked at him and I said, being dead would be better than being with you. And he went ballistic. And so he's like, no, we'll stay together. Everything's good. And he made himself come home with me. And so I think I was 17. We were together for a long time. And I put up with this for a long, long time. It was at that time, I knew that if I didn't get out, something else would happen. So I broke up with him. And I started dating somebody else. And my parents went out of town, and I was scared to be alone. So I had this other person stay at my house. My ex broke into my house. He beat the shit out of the guy I was dating, even though we weren't doing anything. He was trying to protect me. Well, he ended up with $4,000 worth of damage on him. And I, once again, was scared to death. This time, this person goes to jail, and he spent probably like 4 months in jail. After that, and he gets out, like, God, I want to say like 5 months later, we see each other again. And I'm a really smart girl and still in love. So I take him back. One other problem this person had is he always cheated on me. So I was dealing with being cheated on all the time and going through this. So my parents moved to Tallahassee, and I was still in Vera, where I'm from. And we had an apartment there. And the very last straw was he cheated on me, and I was stuck with the apartment, and I finally had to leave, and I went to Tallahassee. That was the best decision I ever made, and in a lot of ways, the worst. So I get to Tallahassee, and I decide, all right, I'm going to go to community college, and I'm living with my parents. I'm only 18, so it's not that big of a difference. I'm living with my parents. I stay there for a while. I start getting my degree. And as I'm doing that, as I'm getting my degree, I realized I want to move out again. It's been like 8 months or so. And they, staying at my parents' house really wasn't working out well for me. It was too far away. I wanted to have the college life. And so I decided to move into a apartment complex. So I move into the apartment complex, and they're throwing a party at one of the houses or one of the condos down the road in our apartment complex. It was a huge complex. So I go to the event because I'm new. I'm like, yes, a party. All right. And I am at that party, and I meet someone. I don't even remember his name, but it's not important anyways. And we talk pretty much the whole night. So I think this guy is really cool. And I was really enjoying our conversation, and everything was great. So I talked to him, and then I started to get tired. So I'm like, I'm going to go home. Well, I guess he watched where I went, and I didn't think anything of it at the time. So the next thing I know, someone's knocking on my door. And being the completely naive girl that I was, I let him in. And that was a decision that ultimately changed the whole trajectory of my life, because he raped me. And the worst part was, you hear about the fight or flight. I froze. And because I froze, I blame myself. There was no one at home, no one to prove anything happened. I'd let him in. I made all the wrong moves by doing that. And there was nothing I could do except what happened. And I went mentally out the door, like completely messed up. I dropped out of college. At the same time, my brother, his drug habit had gotten a lot worse. And one night he called and said, or he called me, or I called him because I knew something was wrong. And he was all drugged out. And I was like, what's going on? He's like, I just can't do it anymore. I can't. And at the time, I think he was 18, maybe 19. No, he was younger. He was like 17, sorry. He's like, I can't do it anymore. And I mean, what do you mean? He's like, I took enough to go to sleep. So on top of what happened to me, I had to Baker act my brother. And when I Baker acted my brother, he had like 500 needle marks in his body. And he weighed barely 100 pounds, I think. And basically that saved his life. But when that happened, I became the source of all normalcy in my family, in a sense, because my brother was Baker acted, he was having all these issues. And so people were relying on me a lot, and no one knew what had happened. So they didn't know I had completely lost my mind and was broken. I decided to go to Panama City. And when I got to Panama City, I decided to become a dancer because I hated men. I thought they were the worst thing on the planet. And I wanted to punish them in any way I could. And so for the next few years, I got into drugs, drinking extremely heavy, partying way too hard, of course, meeting all the wrong people. And I was working as a dancer and finally decided, I need to go to college. I really need to go back to school. So I worked it out and got my, I think at some point I went back home for a little while because I would go back and forth a lot, and went back to school, and I finally got my associate's degree. I think it took me 5 years to get it in the end because I was just too much of a mess. I would party for a while and then I'd go back. I couldn't accept what happened, and I totally changed who I was because of it. So that incident happened with the train, and that was the last day that I ever danced, because even though I was going to college, even though I was getting my degree, I realized that I was on a train to hell. And so I stopped that. I stopped all the drugs, I stopped the dancing, and I went back into bartending. And so at that time, I met another guy who had been in jail himself. Obviously, you can tell I'm picking winners at this point in my life. It's a great story, right? And so he too was violent. I think this was the story that I had repeating over and over and over again, was meeting these violent guys and that had an alcohol problem or a drug problem, and thinking I could fix them. That was the beauty of it. I'm gonna fix you. Oh, it'll be so fun, right? No. But this one had something I had never seen before, and that was like this Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde ability. He was so sweet, and then all of a sudden, another word for that would probably be a narcissist, but it was like he would black out, like nothing was visible, nothing, and I knew that that was just trouble. If I ever saw that look, bad things were going to happen. And this particular night, we had gone out, and I got that look, and I'm like trying to get the ability to drive, and that wasn't happening. He wasn't going to let me drive. So he was driving and I was screaming at him because he was driving, which probably didn't make matters any better. And when I got out, he literally hit me with the Jeep. He didn't hit me hard, but he hit me hard enough that I felt it and it hurt. So we get out and we're fighting. Next thing I know, the cops are there and they're taking him to jail and me to the hospital. And so in the end, the case was getting dropped, or at least so I thought. I had gone to, because in any domestic violence, they have to charge both people. It's like, I don't know why, but it is the way it is. And so I was told by the district attorney that they were dropping the case. I was a college student. I had never been in trouble. There was nothing on it. So it was going to be dropped. Little did I know that the case did not, because it was right at spring break, the case did not get dropped. And a warrant for my arrest showed up on my girlfriend's boyfriend's desk. And he was working at the desk because his wife had committed suicide in their house and they didn't want to put him out on the beat. And so he used having me arrested to get back in good graces and get back out on the beat. So on my birthday, he shows up at my house and takes me away to jail. The whole time I'm telling them I'm not supposed to be here. This is not the way it's supposed to go. I didn't do anything wrong. I'm the victim. I mean, in the process, my ex had taken a bat, I think, and smashed my windows into my car. I mean, I was living in some pretty crazy circumstances, but this was also Easter weekend. So here I am, I'm in jail. And crazy thing is, my girlfriends who knew that I didn't do anything wrong and that we had booted him out, so they knew the whole situation. They made sure that I had money, even though I wasn't going to get it right away. They made sure I had money, and I started bartering with everybody who was in there. I'm like, look, I've got $150 in my commissary. If you do this, I'll do this, and blah, 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 because I knew I wasn't supposed to be there. And I ended up having to spend 3 days in county jail. It's not on my record, so that's why nobody can find it. I was not supposed to be there, but I think in all reality, God was giving me a sign, right? He has this tendency to give you signs and let you know that maybe that's just not the plan for you. Maybe there's something much bigger, but you just have to get out there and see it, right? So while I was in jail, I learned a lot about the system and how so many of these people were stuck in this system with no real way out, because everything was just compounding upon itself. And so it was very, very it just tore my heart out to watch and to see everything. And I was really surprised how well I was able to get through what needed to be done so that nothing happened to me bad while I was there. But my mom, the day after Easter, Monday morning, by 8 o'clock, had the judge on the phone. By 9 o'clock, had me out. And they were like, I'm so sorry, you weren't supposed to be there. That should have never happened. But at that moment, I decided I'm not doing that. I'm not doing anything like this anymore. Nothing is going to get me in trouble. And I started to look for a different, obviously a different kind of guy. I was looking at military guys. I wanted somebody who was stable, somebody who had, something to lose, wasn't going to be violent, all these things. I started to look deep within myself as to find my worth. I had been told for so long or cheated on that I wasn't worthy. And I was like, this can't be this way, right? So I really dive into school, and I'm working on my bachelor's and master's at the same time. And I think it was Christmas time. My mom gives me the book, The Rules If You Want the Ring. So I'm like, you know what? I've messed it up this bad so far. Let's see if I can get something correct, right? And I'm like, all right. So I started reading this book, and I started to use the tools that were in the book. And it kind of worked. I was like, oh, people will do things for you. Like, they'll put up your blinds, they'll put up a ceiling fan, they'll do all these things. And one day it was when I was first getting ready to start my I had like 4 master's classes or 3 master's classes and 3 regular classes. And I knew that my days were going to be so busy and I didn't have time for a relationship or anything. Because I was working on my bachelor's and master's. I had a plan. It was going to go. I'd given up on the whole guy thing. And so I walk into the bar I work at, and there's my husband. And there was just something there. I didn't know what it was. I sat down next to him. We started talking, and it felt like we knew each other forever. 7 hours later, we're still talking. We're hanging out. We're at the pool hall. And now 21 years later, we're still talking. We still hang out, and we have 2 beautiful children together. And during that time, when we first met, within 6 months, we were living together, and within a year, we were married. It was 2001. He proposed to me, 9/17, right after we watched the towers fall, and we still had a plan. I was like, the whole time during our wedding, I'm going, I got a 5-year plan. I'm getting my I'm going to finish my bachelor's, start my master's. This is the way it works. 9 days later, I'm pregnant. Go figure, right? And so now I am trying to figure out what the heck do I do with my life, because the class I need and the school I'm going to is 2 hours away. So I'm not going to be able to be there because I'm due right during class. And I knew that once I had children, I wanted to pretty much be a stay-at-home mom. That was kind of what we had talked about. We wanted our children to know how much they were loved. When I first found out, I thought it was going to jump off a bridge, because I did not in any way want to have a child right away. It did not work with my 5-year plan, but God has his ways, and sometimes you just have to accept it and go with it. And that's what I did. So my son, while I was pregnant with my son, I started making, because I could no longer bartend. So I started making ceiling fans, and I designed ceiling fans the whole time I was pregnant. And for about a year afterwards, I probably made 1,500 ceiling fans. I did all sorts of sports teams and nurseries and everything, because I just can't sit still. So that was kind of fun. I did that for a while. And then while my son was growing up, I think he was a year old at that point, I found scrapbooking. And the first time I went to a scrapbooking event, I was like, people pay $15, $20 for pens. Why don't they just go get a Bic? I didn't understand it at all. But then I caught the bug. Well, that was a really expensive hobby. I got into major credit card debt on that hobby. And so instead of dealing with it and having problems with it, I decided to get really, really good and became a designer for about, I think it was 9 different companies, the biggest in the world. And I taught all over the world scrapbooking classes. It was a really great way to travel. I got to go to Australia, France, Italy. I was in the Bahamas. I went to Amsterdam twice. It was a lot of fun. I got to travel and really experience things. And my children earn about 140 books. And that was just like, I had to make it to the top, right? Because there's a drive in me that's always been there. At the time when I was going through all of these bad experiences, I didn't know why I wasn't giving up. I was like, there's got to be more. There's got to be more. There's got to be more. And I knew it. I just didn't know what it was. I didn't know that it was going to be that entrepreneurial spirit inside me that's been there all my life that was actually going to set me free, that was going to allow me that freedom. So I taught scrapbooking classes, and then I did online tutorials and taught that way as well. I had my kids published in about 140 different publications all along the way. And I got bored. I got really bored. As I said in one of the speeches I've given, I was a mom of now 2 children, and my daughter, because I did scrapbooking for 7-8 years. And that's why my daughter was born during that time. And she was there when I was traveling all over. And I wanted to spend more time with my kids too. I was like, you know what? I need to spend more time at home. So I'm looking at it's about to be my 20-year high school reunion. I know I'm like going through this crazy long journey. And I start seeing all these girls that I'm like, what's in the water where I live? These girls look super hot and they're driving BMWs. And I'm like, I want to know what's going on here. They're talking about some life. And I'm just like, okay, I want to know about this. I want to understand. And being the inquisitive person that I am, I had to find out. So found out, looked everything I could up and decided I'm joining. I'm going to do this. I will figure it out. I'll make it happen because I'm getting a BMW. Told the kids I'm getting a BMW. There was no way around it. We were going to have that BMW. It was going to work. And the first 3 events that I had, no one showed. I completely failed miserably. And I sat there and I cried and I thought about it and I was like, you know what? Started reading books. Like that was one of the things that I guess one of my first mentors said was, go get Think and Grow Rich. All right, got that. Started watching The Secret, learning about all these things. Okay, I'm gonna put in my mind, everything's gonna be great. Everything's gonna be great. And then I had one of my friends, she had a party for me and 9 people signed up. And I got bit by the bug and I was like, wait a minute, 9 people signed up. What am I doing? And it was all about credibility, right? But I was failing forward. I wasn't giving up. I was failing forward. And within 9 weeks, I had that BMW. Well, I didn't have it right yet, but I had earned it in a sense. It took 12 weeks to actually get designs. And I got a BMW convertible. I was loving life. Everything was great. And then all of a sudden, all the rules changed. And now, during that time, my husband has bought a new truck. We bought a boat. And I'm driving a BMW convertible. Our life kind of altered a lot when this happened. And then we went from like 8 and 10,000 to 4,000. And it's really, really hard. So I started to look at something else to do. Not that I wasn't going to do network marketing or whatever. I didn't even know what it was that I was doing, but I was bit by it. So my friend came to me and asked me to look into this other company. And I said, okay, still not knowing anything about this industry, not even understanding what I did in the first place. My mentorship wasn't there the first time. So I had no clue what I was doing. And I got into this other company. They had raided the company I was in before. And all of a sudden, I'm now in a massive lawsuit. And it was horrible. I have no idea what I'm doing, but I had talked to a friend and said, hey, do you want to check this out? And because I did that, I was in a lawsuit and they were threatening everything. Then at first it was just me. And then 13 other people got put into the lawsuit. Thank you, Jesus, because all of a sudden the company took on the lawsuit. But they're coming after me. They had a restraining order on me for talking, like almost like a gag order. I couldn't talk to anyone in my family unless I had them on a list. In the end, the case was, we had the ability to dismiss it because we had them on about 13 counts of RICO. Some of the egregious things they did was tell me that I could be in any other company in the world but this one. At one point, they threatened us so much. My husband and I were deciding if we need to get a divorce if this goes down so that we don't lose everything we have, so that we can protect our family. And I'm just sitting here going, how can that be okay? And I've already fought the hell out of fire to get where I am today. And now I might have to give up my family in a sense to protect them from something I really didn't do. And then it went away. Thank you, Jesus. It went away. And I switched to a different company on my own, and I got my first real mentor. And when I found my mentor, he was absolutely amazing. He inspired me to be a better leader and to really push the heart aspect of everything, that you lead with your heart. You're always there to help other people. And you don't think of yourself at all. It's all about what you can do and how you can give back, right? So I had gone through all of this pain, and now I've got somebody who's lifting me up like this in business. And it was unbelievable what happened next. Like, I swear God brought him into my life because everything changed. We brought a company onto the company that I'm with. I think I'm the only girl in the company that brought a company on board. And so that started right away. And about 10 minutes later, we did that. Then I was able to retire my husband for 3.5 years. And he homeschooled our kids so that they didn't have to go through Common Core. That was pretty fun. That was awesome. We went on 3 cruises in 1 year, and we were just doing all these things because I was living like I had it all when I was drowning in debt. And it was about 3.5 years in, and I'll never forget, I'm at an event and I'm trying to get things balanced out because everything's kind of a game. You have to make sure that all of the pieces of a puzzle are put together. So I'm at an event and I'm trying to put all the pieces together, and my husband calls me and he's like, stop using that account. I'm like, why? And he goes, we're overdrawn by $500. I'm like, okay, so take it from the other account. So he's like, use the other account. So I'm still doing what I need to do. And he's like, stop using that account. And I'm like, why? And he goes, we don't have anything for you to use. And I'm in another town. I'm not going to be home for like 3 days. And I'm going, okay, how does this work? I don't know how I'm paying for my hotel. I don't, because I can't use the card. Thank God the hotel was paid for and my food was paid for while I was there. No one knew. But by the time I got home, I had $6 in my account. And I wasn't getting paid right away. And I was making really good money. But we were literally $110,000 in unsecured credit card debt because I didn't do things correctly. I retired my husband before I was really ready to retire him. So when I got back, I'm like, honey, you've got to go back to work. So he put his feelers out, got a job doing exactly what he does, and even makes more money now than he did before. So he was able to take 3.5 years off. We were able to completely get ourselves out of debt. It took us a year to get ourselves totally out of debt. And 2 years later, before that, got ourselves out of debt. As we were getting ourselves out of debt, my company brings on fashion. And all of a sudden I'm thrown into this world of fashion and I'm loving it. I get a studio. It's 4 bedrooms. I design it into a fashion studio. Everything is great. And then it seems to be the story of my life, right? Then everything changes. They take the fashion out of the company and the designer, it leaves. And now I've got a fashion studio. I've put like 50 grand into it. All these clothes that they're no longer selling. And I'm like, okay, what do I do? What's going to happen next? Well, during that time, Trump was having Business Women for Trump rally in California. And my friend was like, hey, come to this rally. I'm like, okay, might as well. So I had to get vetted to go. I fly out to go to the rally. And while I'm there, I didn't speak while I was there, but while I'm there, I speak to one person. She said, what did you think about it? And I said, well, this is pretty awesome. I want to bring Business Women for Trump to Florida. That got quoted in the paper. Little did I know that paper was where they were going to pick 2 of the speakers from. So all of a sudden, I'm getting a phone call from the RNC asking me if I would like to speak at the Republican National Convention. I'm like, sure. I always said yes. That was just part of who I am. I was like, you know what? You don't learn or experience anything unless you're willing to say yes to do it. So I'm like, sure. So I'm thinking I'm speaking at the event before the event, right? Because there's 50,000 people in there, but I bet they're going to have these little events here and there. And that's probably what they're getting for. And they're like, you're going to have a speechwriter. Well, that speechwriter kind of stayed out of was just gone. I was like, okay, well, I thought I had a speechwriter. And she didn't really help me very much. And then hands me something at the very end, like right before. And I'm like, what is this? It was very odd because I had never dealt with a speechwriter before. So I wrote my speech and then I get there and I'm still thinking at this point that I'm going to be speaking at like one of these little events beforehand, and come to find out, no. I get there and find out I am speaking Wednesday night, prime time, to 50,000 people in front of me. You want to talk about shock and awe? You're just like, what? How is this even possible? But I was like, okay, I can do this. All right, I'm going to get it done. And I get up there and I'm shaking and I'm nervous. I get up there, and while I'm giving my presentation, the teleprompter goes back to the beginning 3 different times. And you can see that I was just like, I mean, I'm speaking, but it's just one of those things. And you're just like, oh my God, this cannot be happening. After my speech, because I have that perfectionist attitude, right? I was like, it wasn't that the fact that I was the only person to ever do it that has been in network marketing or multi-level marketing. I had already had 30 pages of bad press before the event even started. They said I had 100,000 employees, which I have none. All this stuff. So I was getting reporters contacting me all day long. They thought I was the owner of the company. And so they were contacting them and saying, how do you have 100,000 employees and blah, 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 and still a small business? And it was just a mess. So then when that teleprompter did that, I basically just retreated. Like, that was one of my lowest points. I'm up on stage. Now I have 30 pages of bad press. I didn't really understand that what I was saying was so relevant and so valid. And so like I said, I got up there, I did it. I did get Hillary to tweet about me. She was talking about how she felt so sorry for me. But it is what it is. And so I get back home and I really just want to hide. I'm like, that was awful. I was horrible. There were other crazy things that happened. Somehow I ended up getting in the presidential suite at the RNC to watch the rest of the event. And there was so many things going on. You had lights getting turned off, teleprompters going out. They had a whole plan that was thwarted to cut all the lights in the place. It was crazy. There was all these things. It was so weird. You could just feel the vibe of something going on. So when I got home, I kind of dove into this pretty deep depression. I was like, I bombed. It wasn't perfect. I wasn't good enough. It's kind of where I went, right? Not that, holy crap, look what you did. I went with, look, they picked the wrong person, and I made them look like a fool. So after that happened, my husband and I are walking, and all of a sudden it sounds crazy, but I start to hear like this download of information to me, telling me basically why I was there. Because I could never quite understand how, out of all the millions of people, was I chosen. I mean, I know the paper, but there was nothing out there about me that said that I could do this great job or what I did. It was only God. That's all I can say, So I am definitely very, I'm a Christian. So you'll hear a little bit more about that. And that's probably where Unstoppable Angels comes from. All of a sudden I hear something. And like I said, I call it a download. And I'm like, okay, well, at the time I was agnostic. After my past, I'm like, God would throw me in he don't want anything to do with that. But I learned very quickly that that's not the case. And so it was very interesting, because now I'm thrown into, I'm not agnostic anymore, because when you're hearing something like I was hearing in the voice of God, you're like, okay, I'm not, he's there, somebody's there, it's me, I'm good. And then my journey got really crazy, because I ended up speaking to 32 pastors, because that's where he sent me. And it was all about the children. So one of the things that I learned along the way was that everything was about the children, and it was about human trafficking. And it was before anybody was really talking about human trafficking. It wasn't on everybody's like number one list. And I started making jewelry and doing that kind of thing, like anklets and bra straps and bling style bra straps and anklets, all to be able to give back. And I called them angel wings, to be able to give back to end human trafficking. And I've been working on a company for that, because my heart is completely consumed with training. I would love to be able to create a training program for, it could be, it's called leadership, but you wouldn't really think of it as leadership as much as being able to come back out into the world, to be able to like put some of the past behind you and become the amazing person that God meant you to be. So that's kind of where I'm at now. And so I wanted to tell other people's stories along with my own. So like I said, I've been married 21 years. I have 2 children. My son is 19 and my daughter is 15. Oh man, she'd kill me if I said that. 15, almost 16. And we live in the house of our dreams. We got it. It's on the water. So we have a boat out there. We have jet skis. We are living the dream that I had put on my heart for the longest time. And so that's why I believe that all this pain that people go through really actually is the power you need to be able to truly do what you're meant to do, right? Because all of us have these gifts and all of us are given something bigger than ourselves that we're supposed to do. And it's just allowing that to happen and becoming unstoppable and being, an angel, being somebody else's angel.
Glutathione is a big word. It's the body's own master antioxidant. It's a scavenger for free radicals, bacteria, and viruses. There are no products in the market with the ingredient NASET. NASET increases the production of glutathione that's in our body already to strengthen and enhance our immune system, elevate sense of well-being, support muscle strength and endurance, cognitive function, and liver support. It helps with increased energy and blood sugar regulation. Get your bottle of GSH Plus from www.salvationnutra.com.